Welcome back to the accounting classroom. And what we will be looking at today will be the topic of markup and margin. That's what we'll be looking at today. And we are going to look at what is markup, what is margin first of all, and how we can convert from one to the other, the relationship between the two of them. Now, what basically is markup? Markup is refers to your gross profit expressed as a fraction or a percentage of the cost price or your cost of sales. So in other words, the markup is a percentage that is added on to your cost price to give you a profit, or added on to cost of goods sold to give you your profit. So your profit can be expressed as that fraction or percentage. Similarly, margin refers to your gross profit, on the other hand, expressed as a fraction or a percentage of the selling price or the sales. So your gross profit is being expressed as a percentage of your sales that is given to you, or of a selling price. Or your markup, with your markup, your gross profit is being expressed as a percentage or a fraction of your cost price. Now, how do we compute the percentage for markup or margin? Now, if you are not given the markup or the margin as a percentage, you can always calculate it as a percentage as long as you know your gross profit, your cost of goods sold, or your cost price, and or your sales or your selling price. You can calculate the percentage for your markup or margin. Now, to calculate the markup as a percentage, if you were given your gross profit, you can take your gross profit and divide it by your cost price or your cost of goods sold, and then multiply that answer by 100, and it will give you what the percentage markup is. Similarly, if you are not given the percentage for your margin, you can also calculate that. And how you can go about calculating that? You can calculate it by taking your gross profit that is given to you, divided by your sales or the selling price that is given to you, and then multiply by 100, and that will give you your percentage margin. So now let's look at the relationship between the two of these ratios, which is markup and margin. Now, the relationship in general terms. In general terms, you have when markup is A over 100, then your margin is A over 100 plus A. But what is the A? The A will be the percentage that is given to you in the question. That's what we're seeing here. The A is the percentage given to you in the question. So let's say A is 25%. That means then your markup, when your markup is 25%, which is 25 over 100, yeah? Because we used to have an A over B, and then say A over B plus A. The B would have been representing your 100. But we're saying that, let's say that your A is 25%. That means 25 over 100. So if markup is 25 over 100, then your margin would be 25 over 125. That is what we're seeing. So if your markup is 25%, then your margin would be 20%, because 25 over 125 multiplied by 100 will give you 20%. Okay? So similarly, when margin, let's say margin now is 20%. So if margin is 20%, that is 20 out of 100, then your markup would be 20 over 100 minus the same 20 again, which in other words will be 20 over 80. And when that is multiplied by 100, it will give you 25%. So I hope that this explanation is clear. When your markup is 1%, then your margin is that percentage divided by 100 plus the same percentage that you are given. Similarly, if your margin is a particular percentage, then your markup is the percentage that you were given divided by 100 minus that same percentage. So that is, in general terms, the relationship between your markup and your margin. So this is just a simple example. I would have mentioned it just now. This is just a simple example of converting your markup to your margin. And this is the same example that was given you. And now you can see it in more practical terms, and you can see it here as it is written out. So we're seeing here that if your markup is 25%, then what is your margin? Because these are things that you would have to do in examination questions, that an examiner may give you the markup, but then he or she does not give you costs. So therefore, you may have sales, and then you may need to convert your markup to a margin to find out your gross profit in order to work out certain information. So this is why we're trying to get you to understand how to convert from one to the other and understand the concept with respect to markup and margin. So we're seeing here that if your markup is 25%, then what is your margin? So if your markup is 25%, then your markup will be 25 over 100. So therefore, your margin will be 25 over 100 plus 25. So this is basically 25 over 125. And if you multiply it by 100 again, that will give you 20%. So if your markup is 25%, then your margin is 20%. On the other hand, if you're going to give this example as well, if your margin now is 20%, now what is your markup? Because you have to learn to convert from one to the other. If your margin is 20%, then what is your markup? So since margin is 20 over 100, because that is what percentage me out of 100. So if margin is 20 out of 100, then your markup will be 20 over 100 minus 20. In other words, that is 20 over 80, and then multiply by 100 will give you 25%. So therefore, if your margin is 20%, your markup would then be 25%. So you can use these ratios such as markup and margin to calculate your gross profit, because we're going to be looking at using these ratios when we are doing single entry accounting for small businesses and single entry or incomplete records for nonprofit organizations as well. So that we are going to apply this concept by way of an example question to a small business which will be doing single entry accounting or who has incomplete records. So as long as you have a ratio such as markup and margin, you can use the ratio to calculate your gross profit. Then you can use the gross profit figure to calculate any missing figures that you may have. So you can use it then to calculate things like purchases, sales, cost of goods sold, closing stock, etc. That is how you can use these ratios to help you to calculate missing figures. So that's it with respect to my explanation on markup and margin. And what we're going to do in our next video, we're going to come back with a question, an example question, and we are going to be applying this concept to that example question.